was tuned in to Dylan, because Dylan's thing was like, don't ask me what it means, man. I wrote it. I don't know what it means. What do you think it?
Bob Dylan just did something very few people thought he would ever do. After decades of silence, after a lifetime of avoiding personal commentary on his peers, he finally spoke. And he didn't offer a compliment, a polite remark, or a vague observation. No, this was a statement. Short, deliberate, and piercing enough to make the entire music world pause. At 83, Dylan doesn't need to prove himself. He doesn't need headlines, interviews, or social media applause. One sentence, dropped in the right moment, carries more weight than any lengthy essay, any sprawling interview, or any carefully crafted press release ever could. It is the quiet authority of someone whose career has always been defined by selective engagement, by choosing not to speak unless the moment, the context, and the message are all perfectly aligned. For years, fans, critics, and fellow musicians have speculated about Dylan's thoughts on his contemporaries. He rarely, if ever, mentioned anyone by name in public. His silence was as deliberate as his music, measured, symbolic, and purposeful. So when Dylan did speak, even a few words were loaded with meaning, and when those words were about Neil Young, someone with a similarly storied and individualistic career, the impact was magnified exponentially. The music world has spent decades trying to analyze, decode, and contextualize Dylan's words. And now, after years of careful observation, a single statement made everyone stop and reconsider what was once invisible, obscure, or unspoken. The weight of Dylan's voice lies not in volume but in its precision, its timing, and its inherent authority. When Dylan speaks, it is never about filling space. It is about making space, and his recognition of Neil Young did exactly that. Throughout his career, Bob Dylan has cultivated an aura of distance. He has avoided personal associations in public, never offering commentary on fellow musicians unless absolutely necessary. While some artists thrive on public rivalries, collaborations, or commentary, Dylan has always navigated a parallel path, silent, reserved, and observant. His reputation as a solitary figure is not a product of arrogance, but a deliberate artistic choice. He understands the power of restraint, of speaking sparingly, and of letting his music do the talking. This historical silence makes any mention of a contemporary strikingly significant. For decades, Dylan has operated as if the personal world of his peers was irrelevant to his own artistic narrative, and yet when he chooses to speak, it is never casual. His words are a cultural event, a seismic tremor that shifts conversations long after they are spoken. In this sense, Dylan's comment about Neil Young is more than just a remark. It is a rare window into the mind of an artist who has made silence part of his brand, part of his identity, and part of the very mythology surrounding him. Fans, critics, and historians know this. When Dylan speaks, it is because the moment demands it and the subject deserves it. The event itself was understated, almost invisible to the mainstream media. In early 2025, Bob Dylan appeared at a private meeting with the production team of A Complete Unknown. It was not a press event. There were no cameras rolling, no announcements, no invitations for journalists. It was, in every sense, a private gathering, intended for discussion and perhaps reflection. Yet within days the world would learn of Dylan's words, not through mainstream outlets, but through the digital channels that have come to define modern cultural moments, social media. A recording of the gathering circulated quietly at first, shared by those who had access to it. In the clip, Dylan's voice, measured, deliberate, and unmistakably his own, made a single mention of Neil Young. The statement was brief, almost offhand, yet its brevity only magnified its weight. In a career defined by calculated silence, a single acknowledgement was enough to make waves. The music world, accustomed to Dylan's reticence, reacted immediately. Forums lit up, discussions erupted on Reddit, fans dissected every word, and analysts rushed to contextualize the remark. Even without a public performance or an official interview, Dylan had made a statement that felt monumental, simply because he had chosen this moment, this context. And this subject, Dylan's comment about Neil Young, was neither a critique nor a praise of musical technique. It was not an evaluation of albums, tours, or historical influence. Instead, it was a reflection on character, human nature, and the essence of being an artist. Neil always plays his way, Dylan said. That was it. A sentence of fewer than 10 words, yet in those words lies a universe of meaning. Neil Young is celebrated for his independence, his refusal to conform, his relentless pursuit of a personal artistic vision. By acknowledging this, Dylan highlighted a truth that transcends music: the value of authenticity, of walking one's own path, regardless of external approval. For longtime Dylan followers, this is significant. He rarely, if ever, mentions anyone by name. The last time Neil Young's name appeared in Dylan's public statements was almost 20 years ago, and even then, it was a vague nod to Young's free spirit. This time, Dylan bypassed technique, achievements, or public persona. He went directly to the human element, the way Neil lives, chooses, and creates. There is a philosophical depth here, a recognition that artistry is inseparable from the choices, eccentricities, and integrity of the individual. Dylan's acknowledgement is a masterclass in subtlety, respect without fanfare, recognition without intimacy, and a statement that reverberates precisely because it is rare. The timing of Dylan's remark adds layers of significance. Only weeks earlier, Neil Young had given an interview recounting a personal anecdote involving Dylan. He said that he once kicked Dylan off a bus because he didn't recognize him, and then laughed about it. Bob never introduced himself, just sat there like I should know. The story went viral among fans, celebrated as a humorous glimpse into the aloofness of two legendary figures who rarely communicate. Dylan's response, or acknowledgement, did not seek to contradict, defend, or even respond directly. Instead, he simply recognized Neil's presence, a presence that existed independently of consent, explanation, or public narrative. The subtlety of this moment is quintessentially Dylan. He could have ignored it, as he often does with cultural noise. Yet he chose to speak briefly and deliberately. Social media quickly speculated that Dylan's statement was in response to Young's anecdote. But the truth may be even more nuanced. Dylan has never relied on conventional channels to respond. He does not use social media. He has a team that monitors public discourse. Yet the choice to speak when and how he does remains entirely his own. No interviews, no clarifications, just the words, resonant and deliberate. The music press, long attuned to Dylan's patterns, pounced on the statement. Rolling Stone and Variety ran analyses, exploring the potential meanings behind Dylan's words. Social media erupted. Reddit threads debated whether Dylan's acknowledgement was a sign of respect, a subtle critique, or simply a Dylan-esque observation. Fans dissected every syllable, searching for hidden layers, references, or implications. Some interpreted the comment as a nod to Neil Young's independence, a recognition of someone who, like Dylan, refuses to bend to external pressures or expectations. Others saw it as a gentle jab, wrapped in the humor and irony that defined Dylan's occasional forays into public commentary. Regardless of interpretation, the impact was undeniable. In an era saturated with media noise, Dylan's few words cut through with extraordinary clarity. The act itself became a cultural event, not for the content of the words alone, but for the weight of their delivery, the timing, and the identity of the speaker. The relationship between Dylan and Young is not defined by personal friendship, frequent collaboration, or behind-the-scenes alliances. Both arrived on the folk rock scene at different times, Dylan in the early 1960s, Young a few years later. But each carved a distinct identity. Dylan pioneered modern folk music, blending social commentary, anti-war messaging, and symbolic storytelling. Young developed a rugged, non-linear career, blending folk, rock, and country while always remaining ready to shift direction based on impulse or social reality. Their public personas reflect these differences. Dylan is reserved to the point of being enigmatic, almost unapproachable. He carefully curates what he shares, often letting silence speak louder than words. Young is outspoken, candid, and sometimes recklessly transparent. He praises and critiques freely, unafraid to make waves. Together, they form a parallelism in music history, side-by-side innovators, mutually influential yet rarely convergent. Their differences heighten the significance of each acknowledgement or comment. When Dylan speaks about Young, it is not casual. It is a cultural recognition, a statement that validates Young's ethos without implying personal intimacy. Dylan's career has always been symbolic. Each choice, musical direction, public comment, or silence, serves a cultural or artistic purpose. From the transition to gospel in the 1970s to late-period albums exploring new narratives, Dylan has consistently challenged expectations. Similarly, Young's career has been defined by evolution, risk, and individualism, from grunge collaborations to politically charged performances. Over decades, the press has occasionally attempted to pit them against one another, asking who truly represents the spirit of the folk rock era. Neither Dylan nor Young engaged these narratives. Their indifference underscores a shared respect for artistic integrity. They do not need comparison or competition. Each operates within their own domain, fully aware of the other's contributions yet untouched by external judgment. This dynamic makes Dylan's 2025 statement all the more remarkable. Recognition without rivalry, acknowledgement without intimacy, resonance without noise. The connection between Dylan and Young has never been personal. There are no shared tours, decades-long friendships, or backstage alliances. Interactions are brief, occasional, and professional. Yet even these fleeting moments carry significance. When Young describes Dylan as pioneering, it is not as a friend but as a respectful observer. When Dylan acknowledges Young's free-spirited artistry, it is not rhetorical flourish but careful observation. Recognition in this context is powerful. It validates existence without demanding friendship or agreement. Their relationship exemplifies the idea that mutual respect and cultural acknowledgement can operate independently of personal connection. For fans and observers, every word spoken between them is amplified precisely because it is rare, deliberate, and unscripted. In the twilight of their careers, every statement carries added weight. Dylan's acknowledgement of Neil Young is more than a nod. It is a philosophical assertion about art, individuality, and human nature. It underscores the idea that presence, integrity, and authenticity matter more than friendship, rivalry, or media spectacle. In choosing this moment to speak, Dylan reasserts the power of deliberate communication. A single, carefully considered remark can resonate far more than 1,000 words, a decade of interviews, or an endless commentary on public life. Ultimately, the relationship between Dylan and Young is defined by acknowledgement and respect. No friendship, no conflict, no constant interaction is required. Just presence, recognition, and integrity are enough. Dylan's rare statement in 2025 reminds us of the power of silence, the weight of words, and the resonance of a carefully measured voice. In the world of music, legacy is not created by noise. It is crafted through presence, subtlety, and deliberate, meaningful engagement. And in this instance, one sentence from Bob Dylan achieved precisely that. Bob Dylan's silence has always been more than mere restraint. It is a philosophical statement. In a world dominated by constant commentary, social media, and instant reactions, choosing not to speak is itself an act of authority. For decades, Dylan has demonstrated that words carry weight only when carefully measured, when timing aligns with intention, and when the context demands meaning. His silence allows him to observe, reflect, and position himself outside the noise, ensuring that when he does speak, the words resonate far beyond their literal meaning. Dylan's rare public acknowledgments, like the one about Neil Young, demonstrate how deliberate silence can heighten impact. Every pause, every unspoken judgment, every avoided commentary amplifies the significance of a single, well-chosen phrase. In this sense, Dylan operates not as a participant in gossip or superficial discourse, but as a philosopher of the human and artistic condition. His silence frames his voice. It transforms ordinary remarks into cultural events. For Neil Young, for the music world, and for observers of artistic integrity, Dylan's choice to speak, even briefly, signals consideration, recognition, and respect that decades of casual commentary could never achieve. Neil Young, on the other hand, embodies independence in its purest form. From his earliest recordings to his grunge-era collaborations, Young has consistently operated according to his own compass, resisting conformity, criticism, or conventional expectations. His reputation as a free-spirited artist is not a myth or marketing construct. It is a lived reality. Young's life and career are testaments to authenticity. Each album, each performance, each public statement reflects a deliberate choice to remain true to his vision. This independence makes Dylan's acknowledgement profoundly meaningful. By simply noting that Neil always plays his way, Dylan recognized not only Young's artistry but also his personal integrity. The comment is a nod to an ethos shared, albeit differently expressed, by both artists. Authenticity over approval, vision over popularity, individuality over conformity. Where Dylan's silence commands respect, Young's forthrightness challenges it. And yet, in this recognition, the two meet in the space of principle, a quiet affirmation that their shared values transcend personality, preference, and public scrutiny. The careers of Dylan and Young are not merely musical achievements, they are cultural milestones. Dylan's influence in the 1960s was seismic. He reshaped folk music, introduced lyrical complexity into popular music, and gave voice to social movements through song. Neil Young arrived slightly later, but his impact was equally profound, blending folk, rock, and country to craft a sound both deeply personal and socially resonant. When Dylan acknowledges Young, it is not only a recognition of an individual, it is a statement about generational continuity, artistic legacy, and cultural influence. Fans and scholars recognize that each remark carries historical weight. Dylan's acknowledgement affirms that Young is not only a contemporary, but a cultural touchstone, whose approach to music and life exemplifies principles that Dylan himself has long celebrated: courage, independence, and refusal to compromise artistic vision. In this sense, the moment transcends personal dynamics and becomes a reflection on the evolution of music, society, and the folk rock tradition that both artists helped define. As expected, the statement set off a flurry of activity among fans. Reddit threads dissected every syllable, searching for hidden meaning, intention, or subtext. Twitter was flooded with reactions ranging from awe to playful speculation. Some fans interpreted Dylan's words as a profound acknowledgement of Young's unique position in music history. Others treated it as a rare, dry, Dylan-esque joke, delivered in the artist's signature minimalist style. The diversity of reactions speaks to Dylan's power. Even a single sentence can generate countless interpretations. For longtime followers, it was validation, proof that even the quietest figure in music watches, observes, and honors those who remain true to themselves. For newer audiences, it became a lesson in the impact of subtlety, showing that recognition does not require fanfare or public relations strategies. Across forums, discussion boards, and comment sections, Dylan's sentence sparked debates on authenticity, legacy, and the value of deliberate engagement. Dylan and Young's careers, while distinct, share symbolic parallels. Both artists have consistently resisted the expected path. Dylan through symbolic and sometimes controversial musical reinventions, Young through unpredictable stylistic shifts and outspoken political statements. Each demonstrates that music is not merely entertainment, but a reflection of human choice, social commentary, and individual principle. Their parallelism heightens the significance of Dylan's acknowledgement. While Dylan operates through silence, observation, and selective commentary, Young expresses directly, often boldly. Both approaches converge in principle. They value authenticity, resist external pressures, and insist on self-determined creativity. When Dylan speaks of Young, it is a recognition of shared values expressed differently, a symbolic handshake between two philosophies of artistry. The comment is less about personal connection and more about mutual recognition of independent spirit. Music journalists and cultural critics quickly weighed in. Rolling Stone analyzed Dylan's words as a deliberate acknowledgement of Young's artistry, noting the rarity of such direct references. Variety considered the comment a cultural statement, framing it as evidence of Dylan's enduring influence not only on music, but on public discourse regarding artistic integrity. Scholars and commentators debated whether the remark signaled reconciliation, admiration, or simply observant commentary, illustrating the layers of meaning that emerge whenever Dylan breaks his silence. The speculation itself underscores the magnitude of the statement. In a world saturated with interviews, podcasts, and social media posts, a single sentence from Dylan can eclipse hours of commentary, becoming the subject of detailed analysis, interpretation, and debate. It is this combination of rarity, timing, and authority that transforms a brief acknowledgement into a defining cultural moment. Dylan and Young's private lives are as distinct as their music. Dylan has famously guarded his personal sphere, limiting public access, controlling narrative, and allowing very few insights into his private thoughts. Young, conversely, is candid, outspoken, and sometimes intentionally provocative. This contrast magnifies the significance of public statements. What each says about the other is carefully measured, intentional, and consequential. The 2025 statement is a perfect example. In private, Dylan may have acknowledged Young countless times. In public, such acknowledgement is rare. By choosing to comment in a controlled setting, Dylan maintained his deliberate persona while simultaneously honoring Young's public legacy. Fans and observers are acutely aware of this dynamic. The rare glimpse into an otherwise private recognition is powerful precisely because it is unexpected, deliberate, and authentic. In the twilight of their careers, every word, every gesture carries amplified meaning. For Dylan, a single sentence can define a cultural moment. For Young, the actions of a lifetime embody the same principle. The acknowledgement, therefore, is not trivial. It is a crystallization of decades of artistic philosophy, mutual observation, and unspoken understanding. It reminds audiences that legacy is crafted not only through music, but also through the deliberate choices artists make in how, when, and to whom they speak. The remark also highlights a rare harmony between two towering figures. Respect without proximity, acknowledgement without friendship, recognition without commentary. In an era when public statements are often performative, this moment stands as an exemplar of integrity, timing, and restraint.